This week on the Pick Six, the Green Bay Packers are coming off of a win, and dare I say, actually some legitimate, tangible improvement, at least on one side of the ball. We'll get to that. We'll get to the Thanksgiving game against the Lions and everything in between coming up this week on the Pick Six. Let's go. And welcome to the Pick Six. He is Packers Central writer extraordinaire, Mr. Credentialed Media himself, Jacob Westendorf. I could probably benefit from therapy. Thank you for joining us on the Pick Six this week, live across the Game On Wisconsin social media channels and wherever you get your podcasts. If you are listening to the audio version of the show, we've got a ton to get to this week. The Packers won. Jordan Love didn't just look good for a guy who hasn't been very good. He looked good, like actually good. The
we defense for 300 yards. That hadn't happened in almost 2 years.
Been a long time. The young receivers, they were balling out. There's great stuff to get to this week. We'll look ahead to the matchup with the Lions coming up on Thursday, which may not go so well because you and I are going to line up and start for this offense coming up on Thursday. So that's not especially great. But we've got a ton to get to, ton that we are super excited about. But Jacob, and eventually, if anyone knows anything about Jacob or can see the hat he's wearing, you probably know where this extra point for today comes from, because we got a ton of Packers to get to. But as always, we're going to start the show off with our extra point because we like to work backwards. We've got our extra point today, the Mount Rushmore of hate for each of us. And again, note Jacob's Wisconsin hat to find the inspiration for this one today. I'm sure our pal Mike Guano will jump in at some point.
That is not a Wisconsin hat.
No, did I say
you did? And I'm not a big fan of Luke Fickell either. So
I botched that. Look, brother, it has been a long day. It has been an exciting couple of days because the Packers were actually competent this weekend, but it has been a very long day. So my apologies.
Yeah, and you were probably, let me think, with the Chiefs doing Monday Night Football, you probably had a long night into an earlier morning, yeah?
Long night. Not only the Chiefs on Monday Night Football, but the Kansas basketball Jayhawks also playing last night. They are also playing tonight as well in the late game in Maui. Maui Invitational Week. Feast week, man. It's best week of the year.
Of course,
so, little frazzled this week. Thanksgiving coming up. But we've got the Mount Rushmore of hate. The 4 teams above all others that we as individuals hate. My first one, without question, it is one of the biggest rivals of the Green Bay Packers. I would argue that in my lifetime, 1994 onward, I would argue they are the biggest rival of the Green Bay Packers. That is the Minnesota Vikings. Let me tell you something about Minnesota. I goddamn hate them. I hate them so much. Not all their fans. I hate their fans. I got friends who are Vikings fans, but I hate their fans. I hate their stupid purple colors. I don't like anything. The dumb horn, the chant they stole from the Icelandic national team. I hate them. I don't like them. They're number one with a bullet. The Minnesota Vikings are on Mount Rushmore. Number 2, easily, and you can tell from the Kansas Jayhawks apparel here, the Missouri Tigers, Mizzou. Don't like anything about them. A lot of rivals, you want to beat them so that they have to wallow in it. Like, had KU, which unfortunately lost to another rival this weekend in football, lost to Kansas State, I would have liked to have beaten Kansas State because then they've got to sit with it. I think Kansas State fans have to just sit with the fact that they lost to Kansas for a year. That would have been nice. Missouri, burn the whole goddamn university to the ground. Raise it. Salt the earth. I don't want anything to be there. Burn Columbia down. Nothing good comes from the University of Missouri. They are number 2 on the list. Beyond there, gets a little tougher. I don't hate Kansas State. I really don't. I don't really like them, but I don't hate Kansas State. I don't hate the Bears. I really do not. Like, they've been a patsy for most of my life. You could probably argue the Lions, because up until this year, Lions fans love to talk with absolutely nothing to show for it.
Cardinals?
Man, beyond that, it gets a lot. The St. Louis Cardinals, they're on there. I have no love lost for the St. Louis Cardinals as a Cubs fan.
The best fans in baseball. Ask them, they'll tell you.
Oh, yeah.
The Cardinals are the best fans in baseball. If you ask, they will tell you over and over.
I love the BFIB. So the Cardinals would have to be on there. And beyond that, man, it is hard. Nope, I take it back. It is not hard. It is the first team to ever make me cry. It was in, I guess, technically April of 2005. Let me tell you about how much I hate the University of North Carolina men's basketball team.
Oh,
I hate them so much because growing up as the child of two people who met and got engaged at the University of Illinois, who loved the Illini as a kid, I loved Illinois basketball with my whole heart when I was 10 years old. And then they lost North Carolina, and that fat asshole Sean May and the rest of the dipshits on that team. And I know I'm swearing a lot for the show, but God, I hate them. So North Carolina men's basketball, they're on the list. Everyone hates Duke. Everyone hates Duke. No, those stupid powder blue losers, they are enemy number one above Duke.
Let me tell you, North Carolina is not on my list, but very easily could be, because North Carolina has this like snobbish aura about them that like, oh, we're America's team because we're not Duke. It's like, no. Listen very closely to me, you Tar Heels. We hate you too. All of us that don't like all of these teams, and I am of the belief that all of those programs are cut from the same cloth. We hate them all too. And we hate North Carolina too. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
We do.
Oh, yeah.
And we hate Tom Izzo, and we hate Michigan State, and we hate Mike Krzyzewski and his stupid weirdo rat face and his voice. And we don't really like the Kansas Jayhawks either. I'll keep that one a little quiet. We don't like John Calipari and the Kentucky Wildcats. We don't like any of them. But North Carolina, no, you are not America's team because you just happen to be Duke's biggest rival. We hate both of you and hope an asteroid hits the arena each time the two teams play. This is my turn, and this was inspired, so I'm going to go in reverse order. Number 4 is the Chicago Bears. I grew up in Chicago-ish area, Winnebago County, a lot of Bear fans in the area, and anytime Chicago – I was literally talking about the Super Bowl shuffle yesterday. It is 2023. Find a new slant, man. Got to have something. There's got to be something else. Number 3, the Boston Red Sox, a fan base that CC Sabathia says he grew up in a not great town in California and had some hoodish place. I'm actually listening to his book now. So he said he's never been called the N-word more than at Fenway Park. And Boston fans have a ridiculous reputation for doing some of those things. Boston sports fan in general, that might be like Dave Portnoy is Boston sports fan. And I know I share a fan base with him and I kind of hate that, but whatever, I'll get over that. But nonetheless, they are number 3. Number 2 is the Minnesota Vikings for a lot of the same reasons you said, the Horn, the Randy Moss and the Chris Carter and the John Randall and the Jared Allen and his stupid little goat rope dance he would do if they were down by 40 or if they were up by 2. Didn't matter. One of the best moments of my life was standing in their stadium as the Super Bowl was just won by the Philadelphia Eagles and the Eagle fans chanting Foles, because if you're going to steal a soccer chant, then the Eagles can go ahead and steal that chant. And the Eagles beating them 38-7 in the game before the Super Bowl was absolutely, that could have been any team, but it made it a little bit sweeter that it was Philadelphia in that particular case. But when it comes to teams and places, there is only one that plays the moral compass above them all. A place that has knowingly been a part of 2 of the largest scandals in the modern history of college football. The only place that has trademarked the most basic word in the English language. The only place where the head coach was born on third base and thinks he hit a triple. The only place that says, I'm going to hang 100 on my biggest rival. The only place that cries for an entire year after losing the game for the first time in 10 plus years, however long it was. And cries all year about the weather and saying, well, if it wasn't cold and snowy, we would have won. And then the next year, in perfect surroundings, in your home stadium in Columbus, where they spell Columbus with an M, but they put a stupid X over M's in every other word in the English language, except the ones that they conveniently forget, apparently, because they don't know how to read, write, or spell. There's only one team that I could hate more in the world than all of these others, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. And Saturday is far and away one of the most stressful days of the year for me every single year. Because for years, I had to watch my team get their ass beat by them year after year after year. I would turn the game off at halftime sometimes because I would just get so angry.
Yeah.
But there is zero question why this question was inspired, what week it is, and whose ass is going to get beat this Saturday afternoon in Ann Arbor, Michigan for the third consecutive year. The Ohio State University.
I think that's our first finger. I think that's the first time we've had the middle finger go up on this show.
Maybe. I'd be surprised knowing me, but
I'm no Michigan fan, certainly, but I grew up in Big Ten country. I grew up a Big Ten fan. I have no love lost for Ohio State either. And if I was going to keep going on the list of college programs, they would probably be up there. Admittedly, Michigan might be near the top 2, but not higher than Ohio State. So I will give you that. They are not more hated than Ohio State.
That's what I can live with that. There's plenty of smoke surrounding. That was the other funny part. I got into an argument with a Suckeye this weekend about like, oh, Michigan doesn't care about how they win. They'll just do whatever it takes to win. And I'm like, is a Buckeye seriously playing moral compass with me? Get the fuck out of here. Get out of here. All the way out of here. And I know this in general, if I broke this down into like styles of sports fan, the most annoying sports fan might be the please like my sport hockey fan. But the second most annoying sports fan, if they're not first, is my college would never. That would never happen at my school. Yes, it would, because it happens everywhere. What was it? One of the quotes was like, there are 10 teams in a conference, 9 of them are cheating, and the other one is in last place. That's an oddly specific example, and I'm not stupid enough to think something isn't happening in Ann Arbor, but I'm also not stupid enough to think they're the only ones that push the lines. And I can't wait for all this other crap that I hear about and read about that's going to drop, that's going to expose these assholes. And I just can't wait for it all. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Generally, that 10th place team that isn't cheating and is also losing is coached by Bruce Weber, but that's neither here nor there. All right, let's get to the action from this weekend. The Green Bay Packers. Hey, you should. Those last 3 years he was in Manhattan, rough.
Hey, he was the coach of that Illinois team, right? That was in the national title game.
Playing with Bill Self's players.
Okay, playing with Bill Self's team. Yes, I understand playing with Bill Self's team, but he was the coach.
Do you know how hard it is to root for Bruce Weber? Do you know how painful it is to root for Bruce Weber?
I've met Bruce Weber. He was at a basketball camp at Rockford Boylan High School when I was in like 7th grade. It was right before that season because he was talking about how they had lost in the Sweet 16 to like Chris Duhan's Duke team. And and then that next year they had D. Brown and Darren Williams and Luther Head. Those are the 3 that I remember them. James Augustine, I think it was Roger Powell was at starting.
Roger
5.
Powell, Nick Smith off the bench. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they were awesome. And that would have been a fun team. Looking back on it, I don't think I was rooting for Illinois in that particular game. But I went to school in an Illinois school, and everybody there finally decided they were a Illini fan, and they couldn't even say the word Illini the year prior. So that got a little annoying, but whatever. I've made regrettable decisions in my life. That was one of them.
Hey, we all have. All right, let's get to the Packers. They won, and the defense, they probably only won, let's be completely honest here, because Quentin Johnston dropped a ball that was right in his hands. Keenan Allen dropped 2 passes that he normally doesn't drop, including one that hit him directly in the breastplate of his pads. But nonetheless, the Packers won. It's a game of inches. Sometimes you just have to make fewer mistakes than your opponent to win. That's what the Packers did, which they haven't done for a lot of this season. That is a step forward, even if it is sort of a gangly, awkward side step forward. They did still move forward in that direction. But I'm not worried about the defense right now because it is what it is. I'm more concerned about this offense, and that's been the story all year, right, is seeing how this offense progresses, the youngest offense in the league, a completely unproven third-year quarterback coming in off the bench. They looked sick, man. Like, we'll get to Jordan Love in particular here in a moment, but like all these dudes were playing, and it was shorthanded. Aaron Jones got hurt in the first half. Emmanuel Wilson, RB3, who became RB2, he got hurt in the first half. You had to have other guys making plays, and they did. Christian Watson, who we were hard on a week ago because he has really struggled this year. I think there's still a long way to go for him. Catching that touchdown pass was a big deal. And I even put it on Twitter at the time. I hope this is a catalyst for him. I hope it's a catalyst for the chemistry between him and Jordan Love. Jaden Reed is a dude. Dontavian Wicks is a dude. Those are guys that maybe you don't build an entire offense around, but those are guys who can be difference makers for a good offense. At least they have given us that impression, or given me that impression so far this year. Those are guys you keep around. Those are guys that, we want them to be part of the, building blocks of what this offense is going to be at its best next year, the year after, etc. Those two guys are parts of it. Romeo Doubs, again, even if he is the least spectacular athlete of the bunch, the fact that he's got a rapport with Jordan Love, and if anyone's going to catch a pass downfield, at this point, it looks like it's going to end up being Romeo Doubs. It's working. There's something there. There is something to build from there. I thought the offensive line, for the most part, was pretty decent. Zach Tom, who's still very young, he continues to impress. I know you only end up scoring, 23 points. And we, in the year 2023, as a society, should be above probably like pouring all sorts of adulation and congrats upon 23 points in an NFL game, especially one that's coached as badly as the Chargers are as your opponents. But still, this team has come quite a ways because this offense has looked like dog water for most of the year. It looked pretty bad for a lot of last year. As you mentioned at the top of the show, it's been a long time since someone in a Packers uniform has thrown for 300 yards. I think personally for me, and I know there's more analysis to get to about this game, about the growth and development and all of that, but I'm not someone who's going to root for draft positioning. We've talked about that before. I want my team to win. I want them to show that they're better. I want them to win. I don't care what the other circumstances are. And in a year that for a lot of it has not been a whole lot of fun to watch, I'm going to celebrate a game that was genuinely fun to watch and a bunch of performances from these young offensive pieces that were awesome, that were encouraging, and frankly, that were just a blast to enjoy for 3 hours this weekend.
Yeah, they were. And for the last 2.5 games, because really the first half of the Rams game was still a little messy, it looks like they're starting to find some stuff, right? Like they look like an NFL offense. They are leaving a lot of points on the field. That's why they lost to Pittsburgh. And had they lost on Sunday, Anders Carlson on his own cost the team 4 points, red zone field goals, stuff like that. The Packers have been atrocious in the red zone. It seems like the days of the gold zone are long gone. And Matt LaFleur keeps saying in the red zone, you got to be able to run the football to find some success. Well, they can't. It doesn't matter if Aaron Jones is in the lineup. Doesn't matter if A.J. Dillon's in the lineup. They've had one good rushing game this season. It was against the Rams. And that seems to be the outlier performance at this point. I have no idea how they're going to get any traction in the run game this weekend, but that's a different conversation. I think they figured a few things out. Jaden Reed is better than Jackson Smith and Jigba, my friends. And for everybody that spent all draft season saying there was only one player that was worth drafting at 13 overall, and it was that Buckeye that wore number 11. Well, I hate to break it to you, friends. The Spartan is better right now. And the Packers, now granted,
can't say that very often.
No, no, you can't. Well, maybe in basketball, but yeah, definitely not football.
Yeah.
Lucas Van Ness certainly hasn't lived up to the billing so far. And maybe he won't. I don't know. But Jaden Reed is a legitimate dude. His speed is evident, and it's been evident since the first week of the season. He's had the ups and downs of a rookie who's not going to have that. That's going to be part of the deal, right? That's just how it works with rookies. Dontavion Wicks. The Packers' best receivers right now are rookies. And that is probably why they've struggled the way that they have for most of the season. Christian Watson not having the season you'd hope. Romeo Doubs. Still, I think there's a ceiling there, and I'm not sure how high that is. The Packers' 3 best pass catchers are actually at the 3 are rookies. The other one being Luke Musgrave, who my guy Iowa Joe mentioned. Yeah, lacerated kidney, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Keenan Allen were mentioned in Bill Huber's story over at Packer Central, which Mark, go ahead and share the Onion article if you guys want on that. But they missed 5 games apiece. Well, the Packers, they don't have that many games left. So that may end Luke Musgrave's season effectively, which sucks because he was starting to come into his own a little bit. He's definitely gotten better.
They were using him the right way, right?
Yeah, and they got better. He's gotten better as a blocker. He's much better this season as a blocker than I ever thought he was going to be. And he was finally getting some of those deep seam routes and stuff like that as a receiver. They weren't asking him to do the Tucker Kraft thing that they did on Sunday, which was make plays after the ball is in your hands. That's really not what Musgrave does. So hopefully, Tucker Kraft's got some opportunity here to kind of prove a little bit, and we'll see if he does. But the kids, man, it's hard not to be excited. And even still, like I said, those 3 guys made plays, and the 2 touchdowns were the Packers veterans. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. That's absolutely correct, Mark. Thank you.
Veterans.
Yeah, veteran. I'm using that term. That term's doing some heavy lifting there. But Watson made a couple of plays. They want to get him playing a little bit faster. which is good if they can do that. Those deep overs and deep crossers, man, give me more of them. I don't understand the way, Watson is not having the season he'd hoped for. No question about it. Another point, guys, we've jumped the shark to where if you think that Trey and his dad tweeting about Christian is weird, you guys subtweeting about him tweeting is also weird. Like, just, maybe grow up a little bit if you're asking them to grow up too. Just a thought. But who am I? Anyways, Watson Dobbs. If they could get Watson starting to play, but as far as receivers with upside on the roster, Watson is still number one. Like, yes, in terms of most upside, he is the one. And that's not a slight to the other guys. That's just reality. He's big. He can run fast. He's got the traits. Yeah. It's just a matter of putting it all together. And he hasn't. But some of that I think is due to misuse. Some of that I think has been due to poor quarterback play as well. All of that stuff gets put together at some point. And yeah, Watson needs to elevate his game too. I think he has been one of the first people to tell you that this year. So hopefully, like you said, this is a springboard. I'm excited to see the speed of Watson and Reed on this fast track in Detroit this week. I don't know how that's going to go in terms of like final scores and stuff like that with a third of the roster on the injury report. But, like I said, these games aren't about wins and losses. If you'd have told me before the game, the Packers have 3 games against the, Chargers, Lions, and Chiefs the next 3 weeks, I'd have said they probably win 1, and it's probably against Los Angeles if they win any of them. So they got the 1. They can drop the next 2, and I kind of feel like that's probably about where they should be. But we'll see. Kansas City, man, I don't know what the panic meter is like in your neck of the woods, but their offense is not – they're good because of their defense. Like, that is a defense, and Patrick Mahomes, even Kelsey. Like, Kelsey doesn't look the same. Kelsey is a guy who there's been whispers in your parts that they kind of thought he was starting to slow down a little bit, and then he just had. Now, I'm going to say all this. They're going to turn on the gas in December, beat the Packers by 40, and play in the Super Bowl against whoever comes out of the NFC. But that game against Kansas City is daunting because it's still that defense with Spagnuolo, and it's still Mahomes and Andy Reid and Travis Kelce. But not as scary as it was when the schedule came out. When the schedule came out, I'd have been like that. I said it. The only game on the schedule they can't win is Kansas City. Now, I don't think they will win, but they can if they can get some of these guys back for that game.
That game is going to be a really interesting, I don't know about case study, but it's just going to be kind of an interesting inflection point in the early career of Jordan Love, because we all remember his first start. Shit, I was there. I was at Arrowhead Stadium for Jordan Love's first start. And I mean, Spags threw everything they had at Jordan Love. They were pressuring him all day. He had a half a week to get prepared for the game. I mean, it was a tough situation for Love to be in, but I am interested to see against a defense that is way better now in Kansas City than it was 2 years ago, but against the same defensive coordinator, same basic scheme, probably going to face a ton of pressures. That's what Spags does, what the Chiefs do. I'm curious to see what Love's going to look like in that game. One final thought before we get to a little bit more on Jordan, though. And I know Tucker Kraft came up and he has not been very good over the course of the year, but I think over the last 2 weeks, he's been included in the game plan a little bit more. And again, you sort of see the roles emerge a little bit more. And you sort of, I think, and this is why I think the process has gotten better. You have seen guys like Kraft in a very minimal role, but he is probably more of your keep him near the line of scrimmage sort of tight end. Musgrave has been used, at least a little bit, differently as more of a downfield vertical threat at tight end, which is where I think he is going to be at his best. And hopefully he's on the field again at some point this season. If not, it sucks, but it is encouraging to see him be a little bit better over the last couple of weeks. You've seen the wide receivers kind of step into what they are a little bit better at. You're still trying to figure that out with Watson, but the process of finding where are these guys going to be the most successful. As a coach, you always want to put your players in the best possible position to succeed. And I feel like LaFleur and Stenavich and the rest of this offensive coaching staff have slowly, and really, let's emphasize, slowly been able to figure that out a little bit more, and they're starting to put these guys in some better spots. That brings us to Jordan Love. And look, I mean, all you have to do is look at the box score, and you can say, hey, this was a good game. This was not just, again, good for, any old Joe off the street. No, this was a legitimately good game for Jordan Love. And we talked about it on last week's show, or at least I talked about it on last week's show, It felt like he was throwing with a little bit more confidence. It felt like there was a little bit less thinking and a little bit less doing, and the processing was getting a little bit faster. Sort of like what we saw in the first 7 quarters of the season against Chicago and Atlanta, that he was letting it rip, that he was confident in where the ball was going to go. And if you go back and, everybody all over Packers Twitter has already been circulating the all 22 clips, but the throw where he's fading to his left, throws a little, 3/4 arm slot back against the grain. I said that as soon as he threw it during the game. Like, that is a sick throw. That's not like someone who is trepidatious and worried about the accuracy and worried about where that's going to land. That's a dude who's playing confident as hell. That is a really confident throw, and it ended up working out. We've also seen the clip. I don't remember who posted it. Might have been Andy Herman, might have been someone else. Khalil Mack, right in his face. Again, dropped the arm slot a little bit, fired a bullet right over the middle of the field. I think that was one of the big ones to Dontavian Wicks. Like, he is playing much more confident football right now. And that's not the be all end all. There are certainly things that need to be fixed. He had the one really bad miss, an intermediate route, threw it way behind. I can't remember who the target was in the middle of the field. Yeah, it was Wicks. Thank you. The bad miss for Musgrave on that little wheel along the near sideline from the TV angle. There are things that still need to be.
Day. A part of me died after that throw. That was
bad. That was bad. There were a couple other underthrows in the deep ball. That is still a problem. I'm not trying to absolve him of all of these things that still clearly need to be worked on, but I think you're seeing someone who is more comfortable, not just in the offense, because that's what we talked about going into the year and what the coaching staff talked about, right? That he feels so much more comfortable. He's much more poised back there. Some of the guys who have made their career out of breaking down tape and quarterback analysis, the JT O'Sullivans, they've said that same kind of thing. Now it feels to me like he has shown he's a little bit more comfortable in knowing, when I throw this ball, Reed's going to make a play. Wicks is going to make a play. Maybe not with Watson at this point. That chemistry still has to be worked on, but it feels like he's a little bit more trusting that the rest of the process is working, and thus he is able to do his job more effectively.
Yeah, and that, like you said, that the rest of those guys are going to be in the right spot. You know what I mean? Like, that's another part where it's kind of difficult when we don't know what's going on. Like, if Love throws zag and the receiver zigs, well, is that a bad miss, or did the guy run the wrong route? Did Jordan throw the wrong route? That's something.
Great point.
Has been happening as well. I think that we're at the point now where there's been just as much good as there has been bad. And I think that's a positive trend, because after, the first half of the season, that wasn't the case. You can see that he's getting better. And like you mentioned, is that going to be good enough in, a year from now? Or are we going to be sitting here saying, man, he's good, but he's not good enough? Do we have the Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff conversations about Jordan Love? I don't know, and that's where the hard part for me that I'm still trying to stomach is the contract situation of it all. And I hate to put the cart before the horse, but that's the situation the Packers have kind of buried themselves into. Teams just don't play with quarterbacks on expiring contracts. And I don't mean to beat a dead horse when I talk about this every single week, but it's true. And that's why it's like the highs and lows of Jordan Love. You really can live and die with it, because, a bunch of bad games in a row, and you're thinking, man, after they lost to Vegas and Denver consecutively, you're like, okay, yeah, it's time to see if we can figure something else out. Now, obviously they weren't going to do that this year, but I think there's a subset of Packers Twitter, and it's mainly named Ross Uglum, that will never allow Jordan Love to be anything good at all. And, and there's some fair points to it. Like, the throw to Romeo Doubs, it's a good play, but it is underthrown. A better corner probably makes that play, or it puts the ball in a position where a play could be made on it. The throw to Musgrave, like I mentioned, that's a big one. And that isn't a really hard throw. You know what I mean? It's not like he was under pressure.
Right.
He just missed, that's what it is. The other section of Twitter, which is mostly led by Peter Bukowski, so I'm an equal opportunist in terms of making fun of my friends, just so you guys are aware on that, is the ones that will absolve Jordan Love of a lot of their criticism, or like, hey, he's good. We already know he's good, and we know. And I still don't know how you can know. I think we've seen enough to know, yeah, it's possible that you see that, but there's also, I don't know. I mean, this point last year, we were talking about how great Christian Watson can be because he had put together a bunch of games now, and now everybody hates him. I use the term everybody loosely, but I
see what you mean. Yeah.
It's a tough spot the Packers have put themselves in. And that's kind of the fun part of the rest of the season is I want to see now. And the hard part now is Musgrave is probably out, if not for the entire season, then most of it. Jaden Reed's hurt. Dontavion Wicks is not playing on Thursday. He had a concussion or he's in the protocol as of Saturday or Sunday. Yeah. And it's Tuesday, almost Wednesday. Can't see him clearing. I mean, they're going to have to make some chickens against a Detroit defense that eats their ass, guys. Like the Packers have gotten wrecked by they have gotten wrecked.
There are so many other phrases you could have used.
Yeah, but that's the one that I've settled on in recent weeks.
Detroit Lions like to toss their salad. It's fine. You know, different strokes, different folks.
Detroit kills them, man. And okay, again, we're doing this thing again. Of course, Christian's mom thinks he's great. Of course she does. That's his mother.
Yeah, my mom thinks I'm great, and look at me. Damn.
Right. Moving on. Sorry. I don't understand how people can't make that connection in their head. Of course his family thinks he's awesome and is going to, of course. And yes, I'm friends with his brother, so I'm a little biased too, but whatever. Not the point. Detroit's defense has done a number on this Packers offense for a couple of years now. Last year, the Packers scored 25 points total against the Lions defense that was terrible. This year, Aiden Hutchinson almost killed Jordan Love on like 3 different occasions. And nobody knows better than me how good Aiden Hutchinson is. The guy's like 3rd in the league in pressures. 50. He's behind, like he's in the same sentence with guys like Max Crosby and Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett. That's a good spot to be in. And that's a player that he's been a thorn in Green Bay's side. He has at least 1 sack every time they've played against him. He had 1 interception last year against him, which was hilarious. They're a tough team to block, but that's kind of the part where Jordan Love now is, hey man, the deck's kind of stacked against you. What can you do? And maybe it's a clunker. You know, that's certainly possible and to some degree excusable, but we're getting to the point now again where, you know, the Packers have a decision to make, and that decision is going to be made this offseason. Now, this past week's game, awesome. I don't know how you could come out of that game and feel anything other than encouraged, even with the caveats of like the ball to Watson at the end of the half. And everyone was kind of blaming Watson for not dragging his feet. It's like that ball was nearly thrown into the stands by the time it was let go. Like that wasn't going to be, you could put Jerry Rice out there. He probably wasn't catching it. So even with some of that stuff, the plays to Reed, the plays to Wicks, the touchdown pass to Watson was awesome. It feels routine because we've seen so many quarterbacks do that. Well, 2 quarterbacks do that over the last 30 years. It's not. The touchdown pass to Dobbs a little short, but still saw the play, saw the process. Now, again, Jordan, this is where the progression is. You have the arm. Let it rip. Like this was not the problem at Utah State. And that's the part where I'm a little confused. Because at Utah State, it was he hits the hard stuff down the field. It's like there's the pass that made everybody fall in love with Jordan Love was Utah State. He's rolling to his right off schedule and throws a dart down the field against the future national champion LSU Tigers, which is like that's probably the best college football. This would be a great question for you off air, but the best college football team we've seen in the past how long, you know? Although apparently a comparable spread to ESPN Stats and Info against this year's Colorado team. I don't know if you've seen that tweet circulating from earlier in the season, but absolutely hilarious that's the thing. Do you believe now? Sorry, Coach Prime, but yeah, Jordan Love's been good, man. And I think that these next 2 games, Detroit, again, a team that has kind of beat them up a little bit, and Kansas City, Steve Spagnuolo, for my money's worth, best defensive coordinator in the sport.
In the running.
He's certainly in that conversation. He might be one of those guys that Kansas City has one of the most valuable pieces you can have to an NFL team where the defensive coordinator is a former head coach who's never going to get poached from you because he's a defensive coach and he's a failed head coach. So teams kind of just don't let the stink of that wash off at some point. So I'm curious to see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, get these next 2 games and see how they look. And then the stretch run is set up really well for this Packers team to look good to finish the season because they play some of the worst teams in the entire fucking league.
Spags also, for what it's worth to that point, not young. Like he's not like 38 and a failed coach and he'll get another. I think he's probably settled in. Plus he's buddies with Andy Reid. The last thing I wanted to say about Love, just to build on a comment that you had made, like these are the games when you separate guys who are good from guys who are great. Like one of the things that everyone's always ragged on Kirk Cousins for, right, is the fact that, yeah, he puts up stats and, you know, Ben Baldwin and whoever loves him because his CPOE is crazy high and they beat up on these bad teams and the Vikings win somewhere between, 8 and 11 games and Cousins has good numbers,
sucks.
but what was that?
Ben Baldwin sucks.
Well, I'm not disputing that part, but that collection of football writers and personalities and creators, but then in, against good teams or in prime time or in the playoffs, he can't do jack because he's not actually that good. Well, this is the kind of game when you want, coming up against the Lions on Thanksgiving, when you want to see that. Like, okay, you are likely not going to have the guy who's been your best wide receiver this year in Jayden Reed. You're almost certainly not going to have the guy who's been your second or third best receiver this year in Dontavian Wicks. So you've got Dobbs, you've got Watson, who's really struggled. You're not going to have your tight end who's starting to emerge in Luke Musgrave. Instead, you're going to be rolling out Tucker Kraft, who has struggled, and Ben Sims, who most of this fan base had no idea who he was until like 8 snaps into his first game with the team in the regular season. Like, what can you do with that group? And that's on LaFleur too, and Stenovich and the offensive staff. They've got to figure out a good game plan for this year. But this is a big moment. And if Love comes out and he even has a solid game against this Lions defense, which has dominated the Packers in recent memory and made them look terrible in the first meeting of the year, I'm going to continue to feel encouraged about this, but we've got to see it first. And it has to be stacked one on top of the other. This last one, good. Best we've seen from him yet. Late in the season, not against a team like the Bears. Great to see, but you got to keep going because otherwise you're just not going to get to that point you want to get to. Before Thanksgiving, by the way, before we talk about the Lions doing more rimming, boy, he did it, player of the week, outside of the guys we've already mentioned who really stood out to you against the Chargers this weekend. And no, you cannot say Brandon Staley for an all-time press conference after the game.
I missed Staley's press conference post-game, so I'm going to have to go back and look at that. But
he took major umbrage to a reporter essentially asking him, like, hey, you keep saying everything is fine, even though your defense has not gotten any better in 3 years. Are you sure it's fine? And he went on a tirade.
Yeah, that's worth watching. So I can't pick Jordan Love since you said we had the guys we already mentioned, because like to me, that's the only answer. Because
sure, that's fair.
I want to pick like Carrington Valentine or something like that, but we're a first round pick making a catch on a ball that was routine, in my opinion, from scoring, and Valentine kind of being the GOAT on that play.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Clark, I think, is in the running, certainly a forced fumble and batted down the pass in the last play of the game. Rashawn Gary got a sack and kind of, I don't want to say wreaked havoc, but it was nice to see him get in the backfield again. Yeah. Lucas Van Ness, I mentioned earlier that he's not lived up to the billing, but a couple of plays here or there. But yeah, I wrote this in my article after the game, and if you guys click the link, I would very much appreciate that because I don't make any money if you guys don't click the link, as the Onion would tell you. But this game is about quarterbacks, and fair or not, quarterbacks are judged on wins and losses. And unless you're in Chicago, apparently, in which case they have to be blown away. That's still baffling to me. I need Justin Fields' agent. Whoever Justin Fields' agent is, man, call me.
We lost Jacob here. There we go.
There we go.
Did you return from the nether region?
Yeah, I was still talking, so as far as I knew, but I was the only one listening to me. So it's like, being in my house. What I was saying was quarterbacks are judged on wins and losses, unless you're Justin Fields. I need his agent, whoever that is. Call me, kidding. Because I need that dude on my side. But quarterbacks are judged on wins and losses. They don't care if like Justin Herbert is awesome. And I saw him in person and I've kind of been like, am I sure yes. Yes, I am sure now that he is that good. He is, as far as just pure arm talent, to use a buzzword, Mahomes, Burrow, Josh Allen, whatever, he's in that same group. He is a freakazoid. It is almost impossible to be as bad as the Chargers are with that supernova at quarterback. But people don't know how good he is because the team he plays for doesn't win a whole hell of a lot. Well, Jordan Love had a game-winning comeback drive after missing an easy touchdown pass that could have made, like, that's resilience. That is leadership. That is, again, I've said it about 1,000 times. Jordan Love has every intangible you could want in a starting quarterback. That reaction to his teammates, Rashawn Gary screaming, "Stop playing with him." One is hilarious. Two, just a sign of how much these guys love Jordan Love. And I think that does matter. A willingness to, it's like a defender. If your pitcher, every time you don't make a play, like Randy Johnson, I remember when he was in New York, would like throw his hands up at his outfielders. And now, like, after he got traded, everyone like talked about how much they hated Randy Johnson. So it's almost human instinct, right? You don't play maybe as hard for a guy you don't want to succeed. Well, Green Bay does want this dude to succeed. How hard are the Jets playing for Zach Wilson? Just for example.
No, that's a great point.
Tough to play for a guy like that. I don't think there's any question. Jordan Love, get some Raising Cane's, man.
Boy, he did it. By the way, Donna Kelsey, stop blowing up my spot. I deserve that endorsement deal. I made up the rules, so I will not go with Jordan Love here, even though he is, yes, the obvious answer. I'm going to go with Kenny Clark. I thought he played a fantastic game. He is such a good player, man. He has been so good for so long. It's crazy he's still just 23 years old. It's unbelievable that he is still so young. But no, on a serious note, I thought he played really well. I think we've seen, and it hasn't been completely consistent from him like 100% of the time this year, but I think we've seen more of the old Kenny Clark, if you will, this year than maybe we saw last year or even the season before that. All right, let's look ahead. Big game coming up on Thanksgiving. First of all, turkey or ham?
Turkey, no question.
Okay, thank God. Look, I like ham. I like ham 364 days a year. I'm done with the ham lobby trying to push it on us on Thanksgiving. This is a turkey day. And if you're like, oh, but turkey's dry. Oh, it doesn't taste good. Learn to cook, okay? Because it tastes plenty good if you actually know what you're doing, all right?
Toss a little gravy on it, too, if you're worried about it being dry. Well, one, learn to cook. Two, if it's dry, toss some gravy on it. That's the best part of Thanksgiving anyways.
Yeah, if you're just going to tell me, oh, it's such a dry bird, that tells me more about you than it is about turkey, my friend. All right. Now that important thing is out of the way, and I apologize to our pal Iowa Joe because I know he's an anti-turkey guy. Anywho, on to the game. First game of the day on Thanksgiving, Ford Field, Packers-Lions. What a joy getting to play the Lions on Thursday twice this year. What a treat that was for the Packers on the schedule. We've already hit on it a bunch during the last 45 minutes or so. This roster is banged up, and the offense is going to be missing some dudes. We know about how banged up the defense is in the secondary. I'm not holding my breath that Ja is going to be able to go in this game, or that anyone who's banged up in that defensive unit will be as well. So what is the hope? I mean, is there anything beyond just Jordan be, decent relative to the guys you have around you? How much hope do you have for an actual win in this game? I mean, the Lions are good. I hate saying it because I've always enjoyed the Lions being a laughingstock, but they're a very good team. You want to talk about responding to a coach. That team loves Dan Campbell. It works for them. I think Ben Johnson is a great offensive coordinator. Everyone in the league now at this point knows he's a good play caller and a good offensive coordinator. And plus, you mentioned the defense, I think, is probably underrated because of how much attention the offense has gotten. But Aiden Hutchinson's is, playing as well as almost any edge rusher, certainly young edge rusher in the league right now. They've got good pieces in that secondary. They're a dang good team. They're probably going to be in the running because they have a fairly easy schedule to make it to, at least be in the conversation for the number one seed in the NFC come playoff time, although the Eagles are rolling right now. What is the hope? What is the expectation? What are a couple of the things you're hoping to see out of this matchup Thursday morning?
Some of the same stuff that we have, competency on offense. Now, remember the last time the Lions played the Packers, it was 27-3, and Green Bay didn't start scoring until the game was over for all intents and purposes. And to me, those games don't count. That's not, oh, they found their way, or it's just, right. Hey man, they're playing prevent and they're just trying to make you waste clock. So that don't mean a whole hell of a lot to me.
I agree.
But some of the same stuff that you have seen. Like I mentioned, those guys, I think Jayden Reed is going to play, but seeing an offense with, him, Christian Watson, maybe building on something like that, Tucker Kraft getting some opportunities. James Robinson is back, so maybe he plays, probably not, but something like
Rockford!
that. Sound like Fred VanVleet post NBA Finals that one year.
Wish I had his paycheck, tell you that much.
No argument here, my friend. Anyways, like you said, more of the same stuff. And not only that, one thing that is a potential positive, the last time the Packers played this Lions team, Jenkins was banged up, John Runyon was banged up, and Zach Tom was banged up, and Bakhtiari was ruled out and put on injured reserve that night right before the game. So, Aiden Hutchinson is as good as it gets. One of my favorite players. If my son was not named Deacon, Aiden was in the final running for that, and it would have been because of Aiden Hutchinson. So, that was a legitimate thing that could have happened. It didn't, but can they just look like an NFL offense? That's all I'm asking for. And specifically in the passing game, the run game, this sounds awful, but I've given up on that. It's just not going to happen this year for this team. It doesn't matter who the backs are. It doesn't matter. The guys in front of them are not run blockers. And I think that's something that hopefully changes between, now and next year. But can you figure out a way to do that? And defensively, can you slow them down? Because I don't foresee this going well for Green Bay defensively, because the Lions, you want to talk about a team that embodies their head coach. This is part of the role reversal. One of the reasons Detroit is where they are and Green Bay is now the team that used to be Detroit in terms of looking up at the Lions, like the Lions used to look up at the Packers. Styles make fights, man. And everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And the Lions are more than happy to pop you right in the mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And the Packers haven't responded to that for one reason or another. They gave up 200 yards rushing the last time these two teams played. What do you think Detroit's plan is going to be this time around? Dan Campbell is more than happy to just line up and run the football for 4 quarters. More than happy to do that. And they will. And I don't know how Green Bay stops that. At some point, if I were Matt LaFleur, this is kind of a test of manhood and all those other meatball-y kind of terms that you could do. But it's true. Because what do you think the plan? It's like, I remember after they gave up 1 billion yards rushing in 2020 to Dalvin Cook and the Vikings, and they were playing Kyle Shanahan the following Thursday. And LaFleur was noticeably pissed and said, we've got to figure something out because we play the Kyle on Thursday. And I'm sure we all know what's coming there. Well, the Packers ended up blowing them away because the Lions played with the Niners played with the skeleton crew that night.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't know how, Amon-Ra St. Brown, if Jair Alexander can't play, which who knows, they don't have anybody that matches up with him. And that doesn't even account for Jameson Williams' speed, which we saw last week against Chicago. Sam Laporta being awesome, which, shocker, Sam Laporta's good. Jahmyr Gibbs being the type of back that wrecks Green Bay. David Montgomery's always played well against Packers. And Joe Barry said today they have the best offensive line in the world. I would argue Philadelphia, but whatever. Those are the two teams. Detroit's awesome. And their team is, like you said, they're 8-2. If the season ended today, and it doesn't, divisional weekend would probably be Philly at home against Dallas and Detroit at home against San Francisco. What an awesome weekend of divisional round football that could potentially be. But like you said, Philly's got to play the Bills, the Niners, the Seahawks in Seattle. And Detroit's got Detroit could be the 1 seed. The road to the Super Bowl could go through Ford Field. Conceivably. That's crazy.
Gross.
Right. I know.
I think the thing for me, talking about the styles and the fights and all that, and I think, again, it is valuable, for me and fans like me, I do think it is valuable to take time this week to say, hey, I'm excited. I'm happy about this week. I'm going to celebrate it because it was fun and good and we saw positive things. But I think it is also fair to say, going into a matchup like this, toughness is not everything. It is extremely valuable in football, both, intangible and tangible toughness. That is a good thing to have. That is an important thing to have, even if it's not everything. But when you've got talent and toughness combined, that is something that can be dangerous. And let's be completely blunt about these two teams. Yes or no question, are the Detroit Lions tough? Yes, I would say they absolutely are. And like you said, they're an embodiment of their head coach. I think Dan Campbell coaches that way. He played that way. I think they embody him in that way. Sucks to say,
Michigan
but
Wolverine, Dan Campbell, by the way.
There you go. Are the Green Bay Packers tough? As a football team, are they tough?
I'll say this. They're at the bottom of the league, and this is a very basic form of analysis, which is, I'm sure, why you come here. But they don't run the football, and they don't stop the run. when you don't do those two things, some of that, not all of that, but some of that is related to, yes, your spine, your heart, your below the
Mhm.
belt, whatever you want to call it for that. Some of that is a thing. And again, I'm curious to see, because McCarthy's teams were always a little soft too. Is it an
Yeah.
organizational thing? Is it they've just hired a couple of softer-ish head coaches? Is it that they don't value defense and stuff like that in the same way that maybe they should? Do they not value the right things on defense? Like, I'm curious to figure out what the answer is, because they are going to finish at the bottom of the league at stopping the run for sure, and probably running the ball as well.
I mean, yeah, no disagreement from any of that. I mean, that's cold hard facts. And I would say no. Like, I don't think this team, I don't think part of their identity right now is being tough. I think it has been a long time since you could argue that. And that's not to say that there aren't individual guys you're like, oh yeah, that dude's a badass. Like, I wouldn't want to mess with him. I think there's definitely guys. I think Rashawn Gary is one of those guys, just as a very obvious example. I would not want to be, alone in the steel cage with Rashawn Gary.
I'll say this:
Rip me
one
to
guy we got to
shreds.
toss in. I want to give him his flowers, Luke Musgrave, because Luke Musgrave
Yes,
played
yes,
that game with a lacerated kidney, didn't tell anybody, and went to the freaking hospital. Maybe that's
agreed.
dumb. Maybe that's tough. But to be an NFL player, you got to be a little bit of both.
Yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. And again, I think there's individual guys who have exemplified that all year, parts of the year, game to game, whatever. But I do think as a team, as a collective, for whatever reason, whether it's organizational, coach based, whatever, that's not a staple of this Green Bay Packers team. And I think in a game like this against a team that's got both the talent and the toughness, that makes things that much more difficult. And I don't want to sound overly defeatist, but I mean, let's be honest. The Packers, and let's just get into this part of the show to wrap things up. The Packers are a 7.5-point dog on the road for a reason, because they don't have that. And the Lions are a better team. I think overall, top to bottom of the roster, they're more talented right now. I think a lot of people would argue the Lions have certainly been better coached, maybe clearly better coached at times or all year long. This is an uphill climb, and I'm not necessarily expecting the Packers to win in this game. I think, a good showing would be you're competitive in this game, you're able to put up some points, and Love is able to look, competent to solid to good, despite not having his most productive weapon, or a couple of his most productive weapons around him. Is it possible the Packers win this game? Yeah, absolutely. If they're able to build on and get better than what they were this past week when they had their best offensive showing since the Bears game, and obviously you grade that game on a curve, then yeah, they absolutely can win this game. It is absolutely doable, but I think I am still a little bit too far away from seeing enough consistency from the offense and really being able to have any sort of trust in this defense to getting to that point. Is it possible? Sure. Over under in this game is 46.5. I'll say over. I'm first time in a while. I'm going to say, yeah, I think that goes over the point total, even on a short week. Inside, Love is feeling a little bit more confident. We know the Lions have the ability to put up points. I would take the over there. I don't know about the spread at 7.5, but I do think the Packers can be. And frankly, we're at a point where they should be able to compete in this game against a team that is really good. But this also isn't, this isn't the Eagles of last year where they were like far and away the best team in the league, or the Chiefs of a couple recent years where, oh my God, going into them, it's just a nightmare. I don't think this Lions team is quite like that, even though they have a path to the number one seed. So the Packers should at least be competitive because, like you said, in the first game, ignore the final score. The final score you need to worry about is when it was 27-3. That, for all intents and purposes, was the final score of that game. You've got to be better this time than you were that time if you're the Packers.
Yeah, the last time these two teams played, both teams were 2-1. The Packers were coming off a emotional victory in their home opener. They have a Thursday night game at home against Detroit, and kind of a measuring stick showdown, whatever phrasing you want to use to sell that game that they did. And the Packers got smoked. It was I think at the time I called it a reality check. Like, there's a gap between us and, some of the league's elite. And Detroit has proven to be that. If you did a ranking of best teams in the league right now, Detroit is in the top 5, if not even higher than that. I don't have time to do the power rankings and all the thinking that goes into that now, but the Packers are not that. Now, the Packers are not one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL like they have been, or towards the top of the draft for some of the year. I think they're more towards that middle 9 to 16-ish. Well, not 9, but 9, meaning 9 overall pick to like 16-ish area in terms of whether they're good or average or something like that. I think they're relatively mid, as the kids like to say. I just, styles make fights, like I said earlier, and I have yet to see this Packers team just stand up to the bully. And the Lions are more than willing to be a bully. They can score and they can beat the piss out of you for 4 quarters. So like, I feel like they can do whatever they want. And that's not a good feeling against a team that, I'm not the biggest Joe Barry hater. I think that there's some things that he's getting blamed for on the internet that are just frankly like the big run by Austin Eckler over the weekend. Everyone's like, oh, that's a Joe Barry special. I'm just like, it's schemed up perfect. Wyatt can't get off a block. Preston Smith jumps inside and around the corner, Eckler goes. How is that Joe Barry's fault? But whatever, a defense like Joe Barry does not elevate his defense either, which is a fair thing to say at this point as well. 7.5 is a lot of points, but I think the Lions cover. I think the Lions win 34-23. I think that Love and the offense are able to move the ball a little bit, but ultimately this is a team you can't kick field goals against. I wonder how I would feel about this game if Chicago had not inexplicable. Well, it's not inexplicable if it's them, I guess, but just collapsed the way they did on Sunday. Yeah. But that didn't happen, and the Lions turned the ball over 4 times and still won. Like, that's the crazy part. The Packers don't get takeaways. And I think that's kind of the only way they're going to be able to stop them is if they take the ball away from them, and they just haven't really done that. So I like Detroit. I like them to cover. I like the over, and I like the over on amount of turkey legs and mashed potatoes that I'm going to consume on Thursday as well.
All right, let's get to that. Let's wrap things up. It's Thanksgiving week. What's on the table? What's the spread looking like?
Oh, I'm very simple. Turkey, mashed potatoes, and gravy. I don't need to fill up on all the other nonsense. Those are my favorite bits there. Stuffing is disgusting. And I know that's an apology that I have to make to some people when I say this, but stuffing's awful. And it doesn't matter what style you make, it's bad. I do enjoy a well-made crescent roll bun, whatever phrasing you want to use for that, but casseroles and green beans and just all that. I'm meat and potatoes, man. And it's not often I get to consume stuff like that because I try and not eat like a 12-year-old, but sometimes I can't help myself. But yeah, turkey, mashed potatoes, and gravy. If my Aunt Chris did not make the ham, then I will eat some ham. But if she did, I will not touch it.
I mean, I like ham. I was insulted. I like it, but I don't need it on Thanksgiving. Also, dog, why'd you have to say that about stuffing?
I know
it's a nice show. We were agreeing on so much. We were having so much productive conversation, and then you had to bring that up. It's one of my favorite dishes all year, and you had to go and insult it. And
it looks like vomit. Like it looks like cat puke.
What cat puke are you looking at? No, it does not. It looks like bread and seasoning.
The cat puked.
God, unbelievable. No, I want a full plate. I want it just overflowing. I want a lot of turkey. I'll be cooking the turkey this year. We're going to have stuffing. We're going to have mashed potatoes, gravy, all that good stuff. My wife makes a delicious baked macaroni and cheese. We're going to have some sort of mac and cheese with this meal.
I can't get anybody in my family to make. My mom makes the best homemade macaroni and cheese in the history of mankind, and she won't do it for Thanksgiving for whatever reason.
Really?
I'm so disappointed by that. I ask for it every year. I can't get it. Maybe my brother's the favorite. Maybe I got to get him to ask for it.
Have your kids ask for it. No one's going to turn down a 2-year-old.
Blake's 4.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I was thinking of your son, but I guess he's not quite 2 yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
Blake is
no one's going to turn down a 4-year-old. Come on.
Yeah.
Get Blake to ask for it.
I'm going to have to try that because it hasn't worked for 30 years.
Well, we'll find out soon. No, we're going to do that. We're going to do probably some cranberries. We're going to make key lime pie for dessert because key lime pie is better than any of your, like pumpkin pie, disgusting, gross, garbage, yuck. Pecan pie, not quite as bad, but I'm still not a huge fan of it. Key lime pie, though, delicious. We're going to have that on the table. Oh, it's going to be good. I love Thanksgiving. I love the food. I love the family. I love the football. Oh, it's the absolute best. The 3 Fs. And the 4th one is fuck the Detroit Lions. That's the 4th F on Thanksgiving. That'll do it for the Pick 6 this week. The Freezer's coming up next on your Game On Wisconsin channels. Make sure you're checking out all of Jacob's work covering the Green Bay Packers. You can find it at Packer Central, part of the Sports Illustrated Fan Nation vertical. You can find me just kind of bumming around on Twitter at Brendan DZW is where you can find me. 580 Sports Talk on radio in Topeka as well. We'll join you guys coming up next Tuesday as we get ready for Chiefs week as well. Hopefully recapping a Lions win. That's all coming up next time. But for Jacob Westendorf, I am Brendan Brzezinski. We'll talk to you guys next week right here on the Pick Six.